Today on Locked On Phoenix Suns, the next 3 games of the Suns season might be the hardest they've had all year. Why the big men are the key to matching up and maybe even winning 1, 2, all 3 next.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Phoenix Suns. I'm Brendon Kleen, a staff writer at Awful Announcing, a credentialed Suns media member. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen to kick off your game day Friday. Don't forget, Locked On Suns is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So click that follow or subscribe button. Do what thousands of other Suns fans have already done. Become an everydayer and get locked on to the Phoenix Suns right here each and every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. More from FanDuel later on in the show. But let's get right to it. I am occupied this evening, so I'm taking the bullet and doing a solo show so that Ben doesn't have to call out of work or anything crazy. The Suns play the Cavs Friday, and that is where we are going to start because after that, it is Milwaukee, and then it is Boston, all at home. But those are 3 very difficult teams. 3 games the Suns may well not even be favored in despite being at home. And here's what has to happen for them to win them. Well, a lot of things, but the big men have to play great. The front court is the key to this stretch of games. With the Cavs, I don't think that takes much explanation, right? Their strength for years now, since they drafted Evan Mobley, has been that front court where they have Mobley at the 4, they have Allen at the 5, and then on top of that, they have now the flexibility to go with DeAndre Hunter at the 4 or the Dean Wade, the rotation player. Maybe not everybody knows who that is, but they can have Evan Mobley play center and get creative there. So that's a must-do. They have to match up with that. They have to have Nick Richards and Ighodaro play at a high level. Before I get any further, the reason I only say those 2 guys' names is Mason Plumlee appears to be dealing with, I believe it's a hamstring injury. We don't know what his status will be. So one more reason why that needs to be there. All 3 of the teams that the Suns have coming up on their schedule are top 10 in scoring around the basket, and they are all top, I guess Cleveland is out of there, but they're Milwaukee and Boston are both top 10 in terms of defensive rebounding. Offensive rebounding, actually, none of these teams are super great at, but the Suns being able to create extra possessions, which is something that they've been doing since Oso and Ryan Dunn got minutes more frequently, that might not be there against some elite defensive rebounding teams. Those are all factors, but let me continue with the matchups as I talk about all these teams being clustered in these categories. Monday, you have, obviously, Giannis. We all in the Valley of the Sun know what that gentleman can do. He is on a tear. He's probable for Friday's or Thursday night's game, so I imagine he will play. And you, of course, have Brook Lopez in there as well. So another one. How do they even match up with Giannis? Is it KD? Is it something else? Brook Lopez is going to stretch the floor. How do you protect the paint while also, containing him? The Suns have been really bad against stretch bigs all season. And that brings us to the Celtics, right? That's not a team you would think you have to dominate in the paint against, right? But because the Celtics don't score a heck of a lot of total points in the paint, they don't take a lot of shots necessarily in the paint. They are a jump shooting team. But I mentioned all of these teams are in the top 10 in scoring efficiency at the basket. The Celtics are the highest. They're 3rd. The other thing about the Celtics is that they have players who can get to the free throw line, and they don't foul. So that is another element here. And as I said, stretch big men is the name of the game against Boston. Porzingis, I believe, is back playing lately. Horford has been maybe not. Maybe Porzingis is not. Horford in there. Cornet spaces the floor to a degree. They can go super small. We kind of know that is just the deal when you're playing the Celtics. But let's go a layer deeper, right? Because, okay, all these teams have good big men. Great. You just have to look at the roster to tell you that. If you go to Cleveland, that was early on when Nick Richards was first acquired. That was the first game where you started to see some lumps with him, where it's like, okay, yes, he can, get a double-double against Detroit when he first gets here, but then Cleveland, different story. He is probably the main culprit. And it's not just like him making mistakes or whatever, but teams that can have shooting bigs really expose Richards because, I think that his focus and his awareness, as well as his lateral mobility, those are things where, you got to be defending two guys at once, basically, when there's these stretch big men. And that'll be Milwaukee and Boston. And even against Cleveland, it's just a lot of size and physicality. And he struggles with that as well. He is very, he's almost like Richards. He's like veteran raw. Is that a word? I mean, maybe there's a better term for that, but he is in this stage where he is seeing a lot of this stuff for the first time in a situation and in an environment where he actually needs to win and is on a team that's trying to win. And so a lot of these details, a lot of the level of intensity and physicality, all those things he can kind of struggle with, and I think we'll see that. I think there's an opportunity for him to meet the moment, and he can still do the little things that he is good at, like rebounding the ball and, having some individual moments of rim protection and running the floor and those types of things where he set good screens, hopefully. Those are areas where he can impact the game, but he's going to need to get to a new level to match up with this team. And then away from him, again, assuming Plumlee, if maybe he doesn't miss time, he was losing minutes to Oso already. Even if he does play, will this injury sort of hamper him? I don't know. But those minutes when neither of Richards or Plumlee are on the court, we've seen that the Suns are a whole different team all of a sudden, right? Where they're switching a lot. They're switching. They're playing more aggressive coverages against the pick and roll. They're trusting, maybe begrudgingly. I don't know how much Mike Budenholzer actually trusts these guys, as we kind of talked about on Wednesday night's recap show about his history with rookies. But those guys are taking up space. They're making up ground. They're rotating and flying and having these big highlight turnover creating defensive moments, being able to maybe make a mistake and cover for themselves, recover and get back into the play, or have their teammate rotate over to protect them. Somehow these young guys have a level of chemistry and communication and awareness where they're outclassing the veterans on the defensive end. And so I could easily see, whether you're talking about lineups where Cleveland goes small with Mobley at center, or when Giannis is maybe, I don't know how much they're really doing this right now, but when Giannis is the only big on the court, or even when he's not, and him being a matchup problem and Brooks spacing out. And then, of course, against Boston, I could definitely see it being a smaller, more, movement, switching, versatile type of scrambling defense. The last thing I'll say, and this is kind of a backhanded way to insert this in here, but part of why I'm looking at the bigs is because all of a sudden I'm frankly feeling pretty good about the Suns' wing players. And I wouldn't have said that a week ago, but here we are, and despite not having Beal or Grayson Allen healthy right now, they are in a situation where Cody Martin is acquitting himself perfectly well. I mean, he's not probably, with his offensive limitations, any sort of world beater or full-time starter or anything, but in a role, he's showing how valuable he can be. Royce O'Neal continues to deliver. Ryan Dunn is getting minutes and performing at a really high level, and then you have Book and KD. Compared to last year, where Beal was playing heavy minutes, having to kind of be in a role as a point of attack defender against bigger players, same as Grayson, that they weren't really equipped for. Royce wasn't here until late, and then you had guys like Grayson Allen over their skis. This is a much better situation. So where we saw Boston outmatch them at times, and a Giannis, Kuzma, whatever on that team that might pose some problems, I don't think that the Suns have the level to match the best. Like the Celtics may still blow them out. I have no idea, but I think they have enough wing depth at this point where I'm looking more to the front court to provide that support for Booker and Durant rather than sitting there wondering how they're possibly going to match on the wing. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself there, but that's kind of how I see it. What the opposing teams do well, who their personnel is, and where the Suns are at in their season and with their rotation, I'm looking at Richards and Oso Ighodaro and what happens as the dominoes off of that to determine how the Suns compete in what is probably the most difficult home stretch week of their entire season. Next, let's talk about two of those former Hornets that just came up in this segment, and why the more I think about it, it's just frankly straight up dumb to imagine a world where the Suns don't keep both of them next season. Before that, today's show is brought to you by Upwork. Scaling your business inquiries requires the right expertise at the right time, and with Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. Unfortunately for me, I know the world of freelance far too well. I did it for way too long and way more than I ever wanted it to. Heck, I still kind of do. And it is chaotic. And I'm not even in an industry where that's super built out, but there's all the ones they just said, IT, marketing, those are places where freelance is kind of the whole deal. And there's project employees and this and that. Upwork, whether you are looking like me, but more so if you're on the business side, Upwork consolidates it all. You can post a job. You can find a specialist. You can check the qualifications all in one place. So visit Upwork.com right now to post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com, to connect with top talent and grow your business today. Today's episode is also brought to you by the wonderful FanDuel Sportsbook. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before, because right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, and even who's going to be cutting down the nets in a few weeks' time. I was laughing as I got ready to give you the winner for Friday's games to get those $200 in bonus bets, because I was going to go to South Carolina in the women's game. They are a lock almost always to take home that first round win. They've done it by an average of like 40 points over the past like 5 seasons, but they don't even have a money line there because it is such a lock to happen. Instead, Ohio State is hosting Montana State, and yes, I mean hosting. The women's tournament is on the home courts, minus 1,800. There you go. Drop a little money on the Buckeyes in the women's tournament. Get your $200 in bonus bets and have some fun the rest of March. Visit FanDuel.com to do it and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Keeping it rolling here. Don't forget to sign up for the Locked On Suns daily newsletter. That's at LockedOnDaily.com. Just type that email address in. You get a free email every day with Suns news, NBA news, great writing and analysis, fantasy advice, and much more. The latest episodes of the podcast, of course, in there as well. Okay, so we've talked a ton about Cody Martin the past few games as he has made his impression felt on this team. And, of course, for months now since the Suns acquired Nick Richards, we've talked about him as well. Not only do they both come from Charlotte, which is a funny wrinkle that the Suns made 2 deals with the same team this summer, this deadline, but it is also the other thing that they have in common is that they both have non-guaranteed contracts next season. Fully non-guaranteed. So Cody Martin is he is due $8.7 million next year, and Nick Richards is technically due $5 million next year, okay? But it could be as much as zero. And for a while, the Suns, we had sort of looked at that as, okay, we know they want to get under the second apron or try to. We've seen, even though Matt Ishbia is the biggest spender in the NBA and all in and everything else, we have seen at times, even during the most all in past couple of off seasons, he has made some money moves, right? Like things where you just are shedding salary and whatever else. And so you could have looked at that and said, all right, and I did. I said at the time, right? And this still could be how it goes, but I'll tell you why I don't think it will be. At the time of the Jusuf Nurkic trade, when they got Cody Martin, as well as Vasa Micic, who is on a club option, which is basically the same thing as being non-guaranteed because they can just cut him and decline the option, I was like, this is a cap dump. This is sending Nurkic away and getting technically $0 in return for him, right? That's the bottom line of it. They don't have to pay any money next year, and that's why they gave up a first-round pick and did what they did there, because it got them off of Nurkic's ugly contract with much less far-out long-term salary than they would have had if they kept him. But under that world, they would have had to cut they would have had to cut Cody Martin this summer. And now, when you're seeing that having a 6'5", high IQ, athletic, fast guy who's comfortable with the ball in his hands and can guard multiple positions, and yeah, maybe not a great shooter, but does just about all of the other things that you would like a basketball player to do, hey, that's not so bad. And it's especially not so bad when he's making, basically what you paid Josh Okogie last offseason to be a living, breathing trade exception, a placeholder for when you ultimately made a trade, which ended up getting you Nick Richards. That is great. I mean, you're seeing it on the court. Those types of players are just not guys that you casually move on from, even if the relief and the apron stuff is there. The same has to be said for Nick Richards. And I know that Ben and I are in different spots on Richards. I think it's fair. He is already 27, so the veteran raw that I was kind of like positing, throwing out there as a potential term for him is, it only gets you so far right now because he's not actually young. He's not actually inexperienced. And so maybe there is a world where the Suns just say, hey, if we could just get a guy on a minimum this summer, paying him $5 million just might not be worth it. I know, I get that. But I do think that there is something to be said when you're talking about Nick Richards to at least see through what next year will be like, right? Because he had to come in here half a season. He is trying to learn his teammates and his coaching staff and this scheme that he's playing, especially, I would say, on the defensive end, but even on offense where the randomness and the, screens and moving the ball, and he's having to pass and make decisions when he catches it much more than he ever did playing with LaMelo Ball. So all that stuff is an adjustment, and another offseason, maybe with the same coach, but if nothing else, at least with some of the same teammates, could go a long way for him. And next year, I think everybody's hope, no matter what happens this summer, whether Durant is on the team next season or what they get back for him if they do trade him, I think everybody would assume that you would be trying to get somebody as the starting center. Heck, maybe that's even Oso Ighodaro if he continues to develop and mature. That allows Nick Richards to be a backup. And when you're talking about Nick Richards as a backup center, $5 million, I get you could be paying only 2 or 3 if it's a minimum player. But $5 million, where you're asking less of him, and he is still expiring, so it's not like you're committed to having him on your team forever and ever. I just think you're going to have a hard time doing better than that. And the continuity of keeping more guys around, you've heard me talk about for a while, is just a very valuable thing. So what does that mean? If I am sort of coming around to the idea of keep both of these guys, guarantee their deals, deal with the fact that, yes, that's some money that maybe you'd like the flexibility to not have to pay, but do it anyway, then what does that mean? Is it impossible for them to get under the aprons? I mean, No, because my goal is to get off of Bradley Beal, right? Like that's just sort of the end all be all goal. We talked about one extravagant version of that on Wednesday's show, where we looked at the idea of waiving and stretching him and getting his cap hit down about less than halfway from 50-ish to $23-ish million. That gets you closer. If you could just trade Beal for at least cut your bill a little bit. Maybe if you do have to trade Durant, you cut your bill a little bit there. There's the possibility of getting off of Grayson Allen somehow. I just think I'm not going to be the type of, I would not be wanting to be the type of team, if I'm Matt Ishbia, James Jones, whatever, that is so desperate to fix my previous mistakes of these money problems that they're in right now by cutting ties with guys in their prime who fit the type of team that I would like to be. And Cody Martin and Nick Richards already look like that, and they only seem like they're going to continue to develop chemistry, fit even better, and hopefully just get better on a good team with a better coaching staff in a better environment. That's the type of stuff good teams bet on. And they don't get rid of those bets just because they're desperate to backpedal. And nothing Matt Ishbia has done has really told us that he would go that far just to save face with the tax. Last but not least, this is something that I have been wanting to talk about for a while. Does it matter that Mike Budenholzer is so quiet with the media and hasn't even had one single one of the blowout moments in press conferences that we come to expect of head coaches, despite all the rumors about his job, all the stuff going around about his relationships with the star players? Should he be bringing more fire? Next. First, today's show is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Daylight savings snuck up on us again. If you're feeling that lost hour of sleep or just in Arizona, some disorientation, 5 Hour Energy has your back. Maybe you work remote and you work with East Coasters and all of a sudden, crap, I got to wake up an hour earlier. Or maybe you're just staying up later into the night watching something or getting up early to do a different activity. Your whole calendar changes even if we don't do daylight savings, and 5 Hour Energy has your back. 5 Hour Energy gives you a quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. Stay up late watching all the tournament action. Go outside, enjoy the final days of reasonable weather, a hike, whatever it might be. Or stay refreshed if you're traveling for work or for pleasure or anything. Head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, and peach mango. You can even build your own 12-pack or 24-pack delivered right to your door. If you need one now, grab a 5 Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. They're everywhere. Stock up today and stay energized. Closing out the show here. Okay, so this is a little bit of a hobby horse, right? This is like, I literally cover sports media. I work for Awful Announcing. I'm at these press conferences. Like, I'm going to make it relatable to you guys as fans, but I know that it is a little bit not what everybody is always paying attention to or maybe cares about. But I promise that it's relevant here, okay? Because look, what is a head coach? What is a head coach? A lot of things. A lot of which we never see. We don't see everything that a head coach even does. But, so, you know, they design practices. They hire a staff. They develop a scheme, and they try to instill that scheme. They have to adjust that scheme over the course of a season. They, you know, integrate new players if that has to happen. They manage the rotation. They do all of that stuff that is about 48 minutes, 3-4 times a week on the basketball court, doing what they think is best to get a W. That's the baseline of the job, of course. Duh. That's literally what everybody thinks of when you think of a head coach in any sport. But then beyond that, and it feels like we know this when we're talking about college, sports, but in the pros, it's like it gets swept under the rug because, well, these guys are professionals, so that aspect doesn't matter. But they're also figureheads. They're faces. They are spokespeople. They are the individual who fans in the community around a team most often hear from across, ever, right? Like, there are people that work for the Phoenix Suns who sell multi-million-dollar sponsorships, who, operate the arena, who work with broadcasters, who develop the health and sports science program. And all of that matters. All of that is big for the business of the team or the, well-being of the organization. But the only person that you or me or anybody in the city of Phoenix really hears from on behalf of the Phoenix Suns is Mike Budenholzer. And so I've kind of gone back and forth on this over time where, Monty was selective with this stuff. He had a couple of carefully orchestrated moments each season he was here where he would give a statement and then kind of, storm off after a game. Like, we didn't play to the standards. This team knows that. I'm not taking any questions. Goodbye. And he knows when he does that, that's going to be on the local news. It's going to be on social media. It's going to be on, inside the NBA where Charles Barkley's going, wow, Monty Williams, this and that. And I think it has an impact. Frank Vogel, though, he had a situation where something about that temperament and those moments where he did that got very fired up, whether it was in front of the media or at times from what we heard afterward in front of the team itself. Something about that felt not earned or felt inauthentic because that athletic story that came out the day after the end of last season said as much, right? There were multiple moments where he would try to be direct and forceful with the team, and what was the quote? Like, they laughed at him, basically. So that would be evidence of, hey, that doesn't work. But I just think that at some point, right, because this season isn't last year or the year before, this isn't Vogel or Monty, this is higher expectations, I would say. Higher expectations than last year for sure. Probably than the year before, frankly, as well, after you get killed by Dallas that year after that. Before they traded for KD, the expectations weren't super high. And then a further fall. Like, they are underperforming even worse than they did that Monty season or the Vogel season, right? So I think that it does matter that Bud has refrained from going so far with his media persona or like performance, whatever you want to call it. Now, this is how Bud is. If you ask people in Atlanta, like I've talked to our guy Locked On Hawks host Brad Rowland and our buddy who we both used to be teammates with at Dime and Up Rocks, Robbie Calland. Robbie worked for the Hawks doing digital content for them, and then Brad has covered the Hawks forever, and they were like, yeah, this is how Bud is. It's almost like a meme to them. And then Bucks fans and media, like, I think that's part of why it got old with them, and I think that's part of maybe why even the kind of stigma or perception around him developed that, he doesn't adjust, because he doesn't communicate the adjustments. He doesn't come before the fans and say, this is what we tried, this is what wasn't working. So when you have Jimmy Butler rain, hot lava on you in that first round a few years back, it looks worse because that coach doesn't have the attention and the control of the energy and the perception around the team. That's where this stuff really does matter. And so it is a little crazy to me to sum this all up, that when Booker is not very subtly calling him out a couple weeks back, when these videos are coming up on broadcasts, because everybody's trying to catch Durant and Bud arguing now, and Dwayne Rankin's asking questions about that and everything else, it is crazy to me that Bud has not gone that far. But the last thing I will say, that has started to change a little bit. The other day, he talked about, I think post-game on Monday, he talked about how Gillespie, or maybe it was pregame on Wednesday, either way, he basically said in not so many words, Gillespie's playing over Tyus in the starting lineup because we wanted a defensive bump. I mean, that's pretty direct. Like, it's still in a Bud way where it's kind of talking in circles and whatever, trying to kind of dance around it, but he said that, and that's more than he's said previously, and that is a direct challenge to the veteran point guard and an acknowledgement of that problem and putting a person, blaming somebody, basically. And then on Wednesday night, after, even though they had a win, he was asked about why it got so close late and everything else, and he was, again, pretty direct. Hey, our fourth quarters, even in these games where we've been up, like Sacramento or whatever, that needs to be better. That needs to be more consistent, where we can't let our foot off the gas because we are not, I mean, he didn't say this part, but like, they're not a good enough team to ever let their foot off of any gas ever. They got to be owning every single win in every single moment of every game to even get close to redeeming anything about this season and him keeping his job and all the other dominoes after that. So maybe it's changing. Maybe he's feeling his confidence. Maybe he's feeling desperate. I don't know. Maybe if I check in on this again in a month, he has had one of those moments. It does kind of feel like we're maybe trending toward that. But if this does go south again, or there's an even uglier moment between him and a star, he won't get the benefit of the doubt because he hasn't tried to get it. And for him, his future, that matters. And for how the team handles its business this offseason, he's giving up the ability to take ownership of things he tried to do or what he wanted it to look like and point the finger anywhere else. So if he gets fired, I don't know if he'll regret it, but I'll be thinking about, hey, January, February, March, why'd you let all those moments go by without ever speaking up? That'll wrap us up. Hit follow or subscribe if you have not already. We will be back with you next week after Suns Cavs on Friday. Leading into Suns Bucks on Monday. A lot going on. Big stretch as we discussed. Enjoy the weekend. We'll catch you then.